Hi everyone, and welcome to my list of the top 10 games of 2019. I know this seems kind of late, but I've been working on this for the last 2 months, and every single time I played a new game I had to remake the list. And then I got distracted making all new assets, and then it's now. Better late than never though. Before we get started, I want to lay out some rules. First is going to be my honourable mentions for the year, which will be listed in release order, and after that will be my actual top 10 list. The only games eligible for my top 10 games were games which were released in the UK this year, and which I've finished. Because of this, there are games in my honourable mentions that I know would make other people's top 10 lists, but I don't feel comfortable putting them in mine. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started. Oh, and don't worry, Anthem isn't actually on this list, I just thought this was funny. Honourable mentions. Wargroove.
How foolish.
My little bluebird.
Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Baba Is You. Yoshi's Crafted World. Fire Emblem: Three Houses.
I'll cut through. Is that all?
Astral Chain.
Is this really the time to be geeking out, Jin? Listen, the Legion's wired to attack Chimeras all on its own. Think of yourselves as lion takers. Just keep your hands on the whip and you'll be fine.
Look out though. Legions aren't always the safest tool in the box. Keep them out too long and they overheat, which makes them cranky. And you do not want to see a cranky Legion.
Blasphemous. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Demon Ex Machina.
Processing. Designated enemy AIs have been detected by your radar. Destroy them at once.
Indivisible.
Down you go! Arc Stone! Give up while you can, girl. All those who oppose Lord Ravanavar's perfect world will perish by my hand. I so swear it.
Burning innocent people's homes? That's your idea of a perfect world?
Pokemon Sword. Pokemon Sword and Shield are the latest JRPGs by Game Freak, where you travel the Galar region on a quest to become champion, all while filling your Pokédex with as many Pokemon as they felt like putting in the game this time. Your journey will be shared with Hop, your friend from across the street, his brother Leon, champion of the Galar region, Marnie, a fellow competitor in the Gym Challenge, and many others. The new gimmick for this game is Dyna and Gigantamaxing, where your Pokemon get really big and that's about it. The most important feature though is the wild area, a large section of the game where the Pokemon roam free. I actually really enjoyed Pokemon Sword, which I can't say I was expecting. I think the messaging surrounding the game has been awful, and considering how much I didn't like Sun and Moon, I had very low expectations for the game, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. While I was upset by the missing Pokemon, I actually wish that if anything there'd been even less. I feel that if the game had consisted only of the new Galarian Pokemon, the decision would at least have been more understandable, if nothing else. My final team consisted of Inteleon, Rillaboom, Cinderace, Corviknight, Eternatus and Zamazenta, so I wouldn't really have noticed if there'd been no returning Pokemon. One complaint I do have though is that the story is just barely functional. The villain in the game has just the barest possible motivation, and a lot of the player agency is missing insofar as the characters literally tell you to ignore the story and just do the gym challenge. There also isn't really a bad team in the game, such as Team Rocket in the first ones. Team Yell kind of fit the role, but they're more of a vague nuisance than anything, and the true bad guy in the story is only introduced in like the last hour of the game. The game feels incredibly rushed if I'm being honest, and I'd rather have waited for the game to be better, but this at the very least was not as bad as I was expecting. Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night. Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night is the long-awaited return to the Igavania genre by its originator, Koji Igarashi, and was developed by Artplay. The game takes place in an alternate history industrial revolution, and revolves around Miriam, a shardbinder created by the Alchemy Guild as a human sacrifice, but who survives after falling into a coma. After waking 10 years later, she learns that the only other remaining shardbinder, a man named Jeeble, has begun summoning demons, and she sets off on a journey to save him. To do this, she must collect the powers of many demons and find him within his castle. I backed Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night as soon as I heard about the Kickstarter, and eagerly awaited it for 2 years, and then I got it on the Switch. On release, the Switch version ran poorly, had lighting issues, latency issues, and overall wasn't the best experience. I'd like to say I stuck with it because I found the story and world interesting, but I honestly just kinda didn't. A large part of the reason I played the game to completion was due to my intense nostalgia for the DS and GBA Castlevania games. Perhaps I'd be nicer to the game if I didn't have those feelings for the old games, or maybe I'm being rightfully critical. Either way, it's not a bad game exactly, and a number of the issues I brought up have since been fixed, but if you do pick this up, I'd still probably steer clear of the Switch edition. Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is a deck-building roguelite, with 3 different characters and playstyles becoming available over the course of the game. The straightforward Ironclad, the sneaky Silent, and the mechanical Defect. Each character starts with their own basic deck, which you will slowly add to, upgrade, and transform over the course of each run. You will also gain artifacts which will bestow different powers, such as the ability to play more cards per turn, or deal massive damage after a set number of turns. Each run, whether successful or not, will unlock new cards or artifacts for each of the characters. I've been into card games on and off for a long time. As a child I played some Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, and in college I got into Magic the Gathering, and my favourite part of these has always been the deck building. I've also always been at least tangentially interested in roguelites, though I'm quite picky about which ones I actually like. This is all to say that Slay the Spire really hits on a lot of different points for me, and I enjoyed my time with it immensely, with my favourite playstyle being the Ironclad and a deck built around the card Anger, a card which is free to play and adds another copy to your deck every time you cast. Coupled with some other card recursion spells, it can lead to a ton of damage each turn. The game is highly recommended, and I advise you pick it up if you get a chance. Sayonara Wild Hearts. Sayonara Wild Hearts is a playable EP by Simogo, about a girl processing her past breakups and also reconnecting the universe. The gameplay is similar to an endless runner, but where each level is the length of its song, and includes fighting, mecha wolves, bullet hells, and wormholes. It is supported by a strong and distinctive art style, and obviously the soundtrack, around which the entire game was built. Sayonara Wild Hearts is one of the reasons why this list was released so late and not earlier, besides my inability to write scripts and constant panic while recording audio, because as soon as I played it, I knew I'd have to redo my list. It really isn't my usual style of music, and the gameplay is somewhat simplistic, but the overall style of the game is undeniable. The only reason it's so low on my list is due to its short length, and while I'm not saying it's a matter of style over substance, there's certainly a lot more of one than the other.
Silver rank.
Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer featuring The Legend of Zelda. Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer featuring The Legend of Zelda is a rhythm-based adventure roguelike game with a ridiculously long name, where you play as either Link or Zelda to save Hyrule from Octavio and return Cadence home. Gameplay involves moving and attacking to the beat of the music, with each track being a new take on an existing Zelda song. The game features all the traditional aspects of a Zelda game, such as dungeons, puzzles, and items like the bow and hookshot, but combined with the rhythm and roguelike gameplay of Crypt of the Necrodancer. There was only room for one Zelda game on this list, and I honestly don't think there was much choice. As much as I liked Link's Awakening, it was very much a fresh coat of paint on an old game, and while that was welcome, I'd rather give the recognition to an entirely new experience. With its rhythmic gameplay, which I was utterly terrible at, fantastic music, and overly long name, Cadence of Hyrule leaves a lasting impression. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a Metroidvania set in the Star Wars universe, taking place after the destruction of the Jedi Order. You play as Cal Kestis, a surviving Jedi as he journeys from the junkyard planet Bracca across the galaxy to rebuild the Jedi Order, with the help of Seer, an ex-Jedi, and Grease, captain of the Mantis. Along the way you'll visit a number of planets, meet many characters, and battle the Empire, all while coming to terms with your past as a young Padawan. I'm kinda conflicted with this game. I definitely enjoyed it, but it's also got very clear flaws. The story doesn't really end so much as it just stops. The controls at times are incredibly frustrating, especially in the sliding sections, and it has a just plain awful map, which is probably the worst part considering the game's a Metroidvania. It's because of all this that I can't really put it too high on my list, but I do definitely think it's worth playing.
Listen, I don't want to upset your rhythm, Cal, but the boss wants a word. Could be good for us. Here he is, Chief.
An error has been detected on line 10A. All our clamps are jammed. I need 2 workers to climb up and secure the cables.
That's not an easy maneuver.
The guild will double your pay for this shift.
Come on, Cal. What's your score? That couldn't hurt. Huh?
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Get to work.
This way.
I'm right behind you.
Sorry, Cal.
Don't worry about it.
Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 is a third-person survival horror game by Capcom, where you play as either Leon S. Kennedy or Claire Redfield as they try to escape Raccoon City after a zombie outbreak. The journey will take you from a police station to some sewers, possibly via an orphanage, to an underground laboratory, all while being hunted by Mr. X, an unstoppable tyrant, Birkin, an infected scientist, and all manner of other zombified monsters. For a long time this was in my honourable mentions because I didn't think I'd ever actually get around to finishing it. In the end I put aside the Saturday after Christmas and just burned through it, and I'm super glad that I did. I will say I didn't enjoy Claire B as much as Leon A, and I kinda wish I'd done the scenarios the other way around, but that's honestly more of a nitpick than a real criticism. Until this, the only Resident Evil game I'd actually finished was 4 on the Wii, because the series had never really interested me, but I'm glad that I've got in now. The game is incredibly tense, but also incredibly rewarding, with a fantastic atmosphere and compelling gameplay. Now with the news that Resident Evil 3 Remake is coming too, there's never been a better time to get into the series. Also, spoiler alert, this isn't the only time we'll be seeing Capcom on this list.
You're safe. For now.
Thanks.
Marvin Browner.
Leon Kennedy. There was another off strike. I couldn't...
Here.
Code Vein. Code Vein is a heavily anime-inspired Souls-like about a world where everyone is either a human or a revenant, corpses reanimated by a parasite, making them functionally vampires which feed on the blood of humans. Revenants were originally created to combat monsters which appeared during the Great Collapse, but eventually became a bigger threat to humanity as a whole, and thus were trapped within the Jail of the Mists, a land surrounded by a poisonous miasma, through which they cannot pass, and the location within which the game takes place. While Sekiro didn't satisfy my desire for a Souls like this year, Code Vein definitely did. Though somewhat easy, especially when played with the AI companions, it does make a great introduction to the genre for anyone new. The ability to customize the classes also gives a clearer idea of how builds work, as well as engendering a constant desire to try new things. While it definitely has some flaws, I certainly think it's worth playing, and it's easily one of my favourite games of the year.
that come in handy? Is there something good in there? Which way do you think is better?
Devil May Cry 5. Devil May Cry 5 is a character action game where you play as Nero, V, and Dante as they fight Urizen and try to destroy the Qliphothe, a tree fed by the blood of humans. You're accompanied on your journey by Nico, a craftswoman who makes Nero's arms, as well as Lady and Trish. Supporting the gameplay is a story which, while simplistic, has some incredibly hyped moments, and a soundtrack which fits the characters, though can be a bit hit or miss, with the biggest hit being Nero's theme, Devil Trigger. I did say that Resident Evil 2 wouldn't be the only time a Capcom game made this list, and this came incredibly close to being my favourite game this year. Before Devil May Cry 5, I'd only had a passing interest in the character action genre, having only finished Bayonetta and Transformers Devastation previously. I'd always thought they were cool, but I never really got them. Playing as Nero though, I finally got at least some idea of what it feels like to actually do well in one of these, and couple that with the other two styles of play with Dante and V, as well as some of the hypest moments in video games, and I really fell in love. Any other time this would have been my game of the year, but it was one game which I felt had an even greater impact.
Why are they collecting human blood? It's not just about feeding. There's something else.
Death Stranding. Death Stranding is, as described by Hideo Kojima, the first Strand-type game, a game about building connections rather than usual competitive style. In practice, it's a game about delivering packages while hiking, the cyclical nature of history, terrorism, and friendship. The game features performances by Norman Reedus, Mads Mikkelsen, Léa Seydoux, and a truly spectacular performance by Tommy Earl Jenkins, as well as guest appearances by Nicholas Winding Refn, Guillermo del Toro, and many other friends of Kojima. This is all supported by an immense world, music which feeds the tone of the gameplay perfectly, and an almost photorealistic art style which at times was truly breathtaking. I started playing this just after beating Luigi's Mansion 3, and at the time I felt thoroughly burned out on video games. Death Stranding though, it reinvigorated my love of games by giving me something different from anything I'd played before. Just walking around the map delivering the packages gave me an immense sense of satisfaction, before I even really started with the story. That being said, the story itself was just as compelling as the gameplay, leaving me interested in the world and thinking about the game for a long time after I'd finished it. I honestly couldn't think of a better game to call my game of the year. And that's the list. In the coming weeks, hopefully in a lot less time than this took, there will be a Game of the Decade list too, but for now I'm done. Let me know what your list would be, and thanks for sticking with me this long.